Step 3. Meet you at Shadow Tech headquarters. The ride to Greyville was so weird. It was like going back in time to my old life. I thought about giving the gang a tour of my former hometown, but just then we heard the town hall clock chime 9, and I knew we had to get to Shadow Tech headquarters as fast as we could, which, thanks to my navigational skills, wasn't that hard to find. But the moment we got there, I knew that something was wrong, because you weren't there. "Where's Danny?" scoffed Ronnie. "You said she'd be here," said Molly, looking worried. "I told you she didn't exist. She's just his imaginary girlfriend," teased Ronnie. "She's not my girlfriend, and she's 100% real," I snapped. "If she is real, then she's probably too scared to get involved with top-secret Danger Gang business," said Ronnie. Just as you did that sweet wheelie round the corner. I wish I had a photo of Ronnie Nutbog's face at that moment. With you there, step 3 was complete, and the Danger Gang were both complete for the first time. And I couldn't help thinking there was suddenly a strange energy in the air around us. Obviously, that's just turned out to be Max's nappy. Since I didn't know he'd be coming on this mission, I hadn't brought any clean nappies, so we were all just going to have to get used to the new aroma and get on with step 4. Take back Mum's weather-ray. Okay, I'll confess, I had totally underestimated this step. There was a drawbridge over the moat filled with deadly piranhas. The first security guard, the whole canteen full of security guards, the laser defence system, the cameras, the patrol dogs, and it was all suddenly looking impossible. The controls to the lower bridge were on the other side, you noticed, pointing over the water that was alive with the hungry splashes of the piranhas below. I totally meant it when I gave the order to abort mission. "There's no way we're getting inside. Let's just go home," I said sulkily. "Too late," said Susie, staring at the bank of the deadly moat filled with flesh-eating piranhas, where a skinny boy was removing his shoes and was just about to jump in. "Eric, no!" I cried. But Susie was right. It was too late. Eric dived headfirst into the black water. "He's done for!" you screamed. But we all knew he had something up his sleeve. Suddenly, thousands of flesh-eating fish, who would usually look terrifying, were leaping out of the water, looking terrified. It was as though they were trying to get away from something. And they were. Sharp Eric torpedoed across the moat unharmed and shot up the bank on the other side to where the drawbridge controls were. He lowered the large metal bridge, and within a minute we crossed it. "That was awesome," you said, high-fiving Eric. "Thanks. If you think that's cool, you should see what the others can do," said Eric, who was now back in human mode. As you looked around the Danger Gang, I could tell we were all thinking the same. "If we all use our freaky abilities," Molly said, "and work together," added Susie. "Then maybe could," said Charlie. "Wah!" screeched Max. The sound of his cry echoed across the moat and would surely alert someone if we didn't find a way to shut him up. I tried everything, cooing, singing, biffing myself on the nose, but nothing worked. "For crying out loud, can you not understand a word he's saying?" snapped Ronnie. "He wants a snack!" Charlie quickly reached into his bag, pulled out a carrot stick and handed it to Max, and he stopped crying instantly. "Wait, you can understand him," I gasped. Ronnie nodded. "You can understand my baby brother's cry?" "Yeah, ever since that freaky thing happened to me in the summer. You know, when you had to change my..." "We remember," I said quickly, not wanting to relive it. "Right, well, since then, I've been able to understand babies," Ronnie said, as though it was no big deal. A few moments later, the Danger Gang was running towards Shadow Tech, ready to face whatever obstacles they put in our way, with my baby brother, silent and smiling, strapped to the back of his new best friend, babysitter, Ronnie. Molly fooled the first security guard by turning invisible and stealing his keys. Charlie unscrewed the lid of Mr. Fluffle's exercise ball carefully, dropped a few pieces of sweet and salty popcorn inside, screwed the whole lid back on and rolled the ball into the whole canteen full of security guards enjoying their coffee break. We dived for cover outside and heard the shattering of the ball, followed by terrified screams as the security team ran for their lives. Katie backflipped through the maze of lasers, squeezing through the tightest of gaps that only someone as tiny as her could have been able to manage, until she was at the other side and disabled them. I spotted Susie staring at the security cameras facing us. Then she'd take a deep breath and held it, and held it, and held it, and instead of turning red in the face like any other kid would, she was turning pumpkin orange. I thought for a second she was going to explode into that huge round pumpkin like she did on Halloween, but instead her fingers turned as green as the forest and shot out like long twisting vines, which she used like whips to smash the lenses of the spying cameras. Jamelia turned the guard dogs with the Freiburg fur that she now kept tied round her wrist as a bracelet, and the fearsome hounds cowered in obedience at the scent to the legendary dog. We were doing it. The plan was actually working. Plus, running through the corridors of Shadow Tech with you was so cool. I finally had my psyche back, and you're way better than a hamster. It must have been how Batman feels when Robin gets back from holiday. All we had to do now was find that weather ray and get out of there. Everything had gone so well that this next pass seemed like it was going to be easy peasy. Until Katie squeaked and pointed at something moving up ahead. Something dark and grey on the walls. A shadow, then another one, and another, until there was a whole squad of Shadow Tech shadow guards patrolling the corridor ahead of us, and they all stopped outside one door. It looked hopeless. There was no way we were going to get past them. We'd already failed against one back at the school, and there was a whole squad. But then you had a bright idea. What do shadows hate? You asked. We all shrugged, and you pulled out your torch out of your backpack and flicked it on. Light. It was an awesome idea, but there was no way one little torch was going to be bright enough to wipe out those shadow guards. That's when we all whipped out our torches and flicked them on too. I grabbed my trusty pencil case torch from my rucksack, and well, as I switched it on, I noticed a familiar crack of green light around it, zapping from the torch's handle and all along my hand. That's when something freaky happened in Greyville. All the lights in Shadow Tech headquarters dimmed a little, as though the power was being sucked out of them. Then Katie gave another little squeak. "Frankie," she gasped, "you're glowing." I looked down. My hand was pulsing with a weird green light, as if I had light bulbs underneath my skin. As I stared, the light started spreading all along my arm, and in just a few seconds my entire body was glowing. My skin was tingling like there was apple fizzplosion running through my veins, and the light was still getting stronger. Soon my friends were covering their eyes with their hands. I was brighter than the sun. "What's going on?" I heard one of the Shadow Tech guards mutter. Then suddenly I knew just what to do. "It's danger time!" I grinned and held out my palms towards them. Super awesome bolts of green light pew-pewed out of my hands right into the shadow guards, and they faded out of existence. I couldn't believe it. It turns out I had freaky magic too. I mean, I know I didn't say anything in my letters, but I had secretly been properly jealous of the rest of the gang. I mean, my mates could turn invisible and transform into sharks. All I had was a pencil case with a torch. But as I stood there, glowing like the sun, I remembered that I'd been holding that torch when the crazy lightning struck my house, and I guess somehow strange electrical powers had been transferred to me. My magic had just taken a little longer to come along than everybody else's, but it arrived at just the perfect moment. As soon as the shadows had been blasted away, the light and the tingling in my body faded. It had been the bit of freaky luck we needed. We burst into the room where they were keeping Mum's weather ray, and there it was, sitting in a dramatic pool of light. So we wheeled it back past the cowering guard dogs, under the broken security camera, through the deactivated laser beam, scooping up the now normal-sized Mr. Fluffles from the empty canteen, straight past the first security guard who was still searching for his keys on the floor, and over the drawbridge of terrified flesh-eating piranhas. And so once we were back outside by the bikes, step 4 was complete. "We did it!" I cheered. "Yeah, but what's that awful smell?" Susie asked. "I think it's coming from the weather ray," Eric gagged, almost being sick from the smell. He was right. There was a funky pong coming from my mum's weather-zapping invention, and Max was about to show us why. He reached up with a little hatch that said, "Warning, laser beam, do not touch." And before I could stop him, he'd wiggled his little baby fingers into the gap and pinged off the cover. Something fell out and hit the ground with a sloppy thud, and the revolting stink became 100 times worse. "Oh, it's a nappy!" Jamelia whined. "A poopy nappy," Ronnie added. And sure enough, the thing that fell out of the weather ray was one of Max's disgusting poo catchers. I remember what Mum had said earlier to the police officer. The thing that had caught in my mind, although I didn't understand why, it was starting to smell like old nappies. And so I suddenly had one of those flashbacks like you see in the movies. It was the night of the freaky storm. Dad was watching the football. Max filled his nappy, then climbed out of the high chair and vanished. He must have gone into Mum's lab after all, ripped off his disgusting, rotten, eggy, poopy-filled nappy, opened up the hatch that had the words "Warning, laser beam, do not touch" written on it, and shoved his nappy inside. My brother's pooey nappy must have sloshed around the inner workings of Mum's invention. I bet that's what that weird buzzing sound was. Now, I'm no scientist, but even I know that having a big pile of baby poo inside a highly unstable invention designed to control the weather with no limiter installed is a recipe for disaster. Weather machine plus poo equals disaster. I suddenly remember the door to the lab flying open and realised that it wasn't the storm blasting into our house. It was Mum's invention overloading and blasting laser beam of nappy-infused toxic weather energy out through the pointy end of the telescopic bit, smashing straight through the window and into the sky over Freaky. I snapped out of my flashback. "So it was you that started the freaky storm," I said in amazement at Max, who was smiling at his 9-month-old poopy nappy like he'd been reunited with an old friend. "You and Mum's invention. That's what gave us all those freaky abilities and made all the weird stuff happen. So does that mean that your mum can zap these powers away? Because I'd really like to have a bath," Eric said, and we all laughed. Before we could high-five each other, there was a screech of brakes and a white Shadow Tech van skidded into the car park, the same van that had been at my school. That was when Max blew our cover and started crying like a baby. I know he is a baby, but there's a time and a place to act like one, and hiding in the bushes from an evil shadow agent is not one of them. I passed him over to Ronnie, the baby whisperer, to try and shush him, but it was too late. This was it, we all thought. Our time was up. There was no way we were getting out of this one.